welcome to this episode of The Common Sense Skeptic, which is going to be a little different from others we've done, as this is the first interview we are conducting with invited guests. We're going to have a discussion with the lawyers from McCue Jury Partners, who are representing 4 rape victims in the UK, suing Andrew Tate in civil court for damages resulting from alleged rape and physical abuse. Women failed by UK criminal prosecutors who completely dropped the ball on pursuing the Tate brothers on criminal charges prior to 2016, before Tate and his younger brother fled to Romania to, ironically, escape justice. We've got associate Jack Beeston and partner McCue Jury lined up for you, talking about developments in their UK civil case. This interview was pre-recorded on October 6th of 2023, while the 2 men were in Romania for reasons we'll go through during our chat. Some slight edits have been made to the interview to remove gaps and delays in responses, since they were literally talking to us from the other side of the planet. So, welcome Jack and Matthew. Jack, we've been chatting back and forth by email for a week or so. Could you give us your Coles Note biography?
Yeah, sure. We both are currently speaking to you from Bucharest, where we were here yesterday for a press conference. I have been working at McCue Jury Partners for about 13 months now, and working on this case, since its inception, which has taken up a pretty significant chunk of my time. Before that, I was a property litigator working at a couple of firms in London, primarily focused on sort of landlord and tenant law. So yeah, quite a big departure.
And Matthew, could you also please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, of course. So I'm the managing partner of McCue Jury Partners, and as Jack said, we've been working on this case for quite some time. I mean, and it's taking up an awful lot of our time, which we're very happy for it to do so. It's an incredibly important case. But by way of background, I've been a public interest litigator and human rights and international law specialist for about 20 years. My background is broadly in representing victims of terrorism against rogue states, financiers, sponsors of terrorism, terrorist organizations themselves, in civil proceedings. So this has been somewhat different to our usual bread and butter, as it were, but no less important in terms of the public interest aspect.
Maybe the best place to start the questions today is with the most recent event, which is your news conference in Romania on October 5th, where you collaborated with the legal team and the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, which represent Tate victims in the US who are being sued, to make some announcements.
My team and I are here from the UK on behalf of 4 English survivors of alleged rapes and serious sexual and physical assaults by Andrew Tate. We'll ensure that those complicit in these attempts to bully and silence not only the survivors, but also witnesses to Tate's alleged crimes will be subject to legal action both in the UK and the US. The UK police have told us that they believe there was enough evidence for a prosecution of Tate in England. We still do not know why our Crown Prosecution Service chose not to do so, but we're determined to find out. We are also determined to ensure that Tate will still face prosecution in England for his alleged crimes. Following the announcement by the survivors of their legal action, the Home Office has also encouraged the police to reopen their investigation.
Maybe you can tell us what the goal of that event was, and then your take on how that event went.
Well, the purpose of the event was to bring together lawyers from different jurisdictions who were representing either victims or witnesses in respect to the Tate investigations and prosecutions and civil proceedings, and bring them together in one place so that we could present a united message that recent campaign to intimidate, harass, and threaten victims and witnesses by those associated with Tate were not going to be successful, and would be met with the most robust response. Also, the purpose was to educate the public about what was going on outside of the Romanian prosecution. Obviously, a lot of the reporting, quite rightly, has been focused on the prosecution here in Romania of Tate and his brother and others for human trafficking, rape, and links to organized crime. But less reported and less known is the fact that there are 4 UK victims of Tate's alleged crimes. There is also a victim who was a US citizen of Tate's alleged crimes, and we've also been contacted by, our firm alone has been contacted by at least a dozen other individuals claiming to have been assaulted by Tate from various jurisdictions around the world. And we were also here, I think, to just thank and applaud the Romanian authorities for what they're doing, because unfortunately, in our own jurisdiction in England, very little has been done up until recently, when the English victims have come forward and they're bringing their own legal action, which they shouldn't have to do in the first place. I mean, it's really for the authorities to do, but they dropped the ball, as you said.
From your press release on the event, one of your intended goals was to alert the Romanian authorities to what the Tates are doing to their victims. Do you have any meetings lined up with the Romanian prosecutors?
We have been in contact with the Romanian prosecutors, but quite rightly, they are trying to ensure the integrity of their prosecution, where, despite the fact that communicating with us and meeting with us, etc., would have no prejudice on their investigation. They're quite rightly exercising as much caution as possible. And I think until the trial starts, I think quite rightly they are, let's just say, quarantining themselves from investigations and civil proceedings in other jurisdictions.
So basically keeping an arm's length to avoid any confusion between the cases?
That's right. I mean, I think, of course, and also they're just incredibly busy in focusing on what they're doing. I mean, it's such a mammoth undertaking.
You mentioned at the presser that your law firm has been threatened with legal action for doing your jobs as lawyers in this case. Could you tell us any more about that?
Well, we received a missive from Andrew Tate, which essentially is threatening us with a lawsuit for defamation, because obviously we have been making public our clients, the victims and survivors of his alleged crimes. We've been making public their claims, which is part of our job, is to advocate on behalf of our clients. Obviously, he's very upset by that. I mean, I'm duty bound to say that he denies the claims against him, and that's his right. There is a presumption of innocence, of course, and the right to due process. All of that is proper and correct. What I will say is I've seen the evidence, and based on knowledge, belief, and experience, it's my belief and opinion that Andrew Tate raped 3 women and seriously assaulted another. And across all 4, there is a uniform MO, which is that he allegedly throttled them until the blood vessels in their eyeballs burst and they passed out. And then, well, at least 3 of them continued to have sex with them. Those are the allegations against him. He doesn't like that being said, but that's part of the justice system, which is open justice, basic principle of open justice, that these things are reported on. Apologies to Mr. Tate, but that's just the way an open democracy and open justice works.
Just a little ironic that the man who holds open court in the court of public opinion daily starts intimidating anybody else who comes out with the other side of that story. It's remarkable that they never shut up about how innocent they are and how the Matrix is after them. But as soon as someone stands up to them and tells them the Matrix is not real, now you become a target of him and his tater-tot army.
I think that's right, and I think it's, we're never going to be in a position where we have the megaphone that he and his brother and their associates have. We're just never going to be able to reach that many people. And so obviously it's important when misinformation is routinely spread about our cases, the case in America and, the proceedings in Romania, to counter that misinformation and, tell the truth. And I think it was pretty telling that we held a press conference yesterday to explain about the harassment and intimidation that our clients, and I say that jointly with the American teams, have been facing. And he sent people from his own legal team and public relations team to harass us during that press conference. It's just the only tactic that they seem to employ, and it's one that they, seem to fall back on as just a matter of course. We couldn't have made the point any better ourselves. They just showed up and demonstrated it for us, which was quite extraordinary behavior, really.
As you said in your post interview, the circus brought the clowns.
Yeah. I think also, an extension of that, I think, is the clown car brought not only brought the clowns, it brought the circus. But it is, I mean, it seems to us it is a clown car. Tate's legal team and communications team. I mean, some of the stuff they do is crazy, but no less dangerous. I mean, it's easy to laugh at Tate and ridicule him as some sort of pantomime villain, but actually, obviously, what he does. Let's put the serious allegations of criminality aside, but the toxic misogyny that he spreads across the internet by itself is incredibly dangerous societally. None of this is by accident. He's obviously a very, he considers what he does, I think quite carefully, but at the same time, it's all very short term, in as much as he tends to react and take action, rather than think about the long term consequences. If he was being properly advised, then a lot of the steps that he's been taking, I think he should have steered well clear of. But needless to say, that's I suppose to our advantage. So I shouldn't complain too much.
Exactly. Every time the man opens his mouth, it's more evidence for everybody on all sides.
Yeah. Or even every time his lawyer opens his mouth, it's more evidence for our side. I mean, that's the quality of legal representation we're looking at, I think.
Did you happen to catch the episode we did where we broke down Joe McBride's appearance on Fresh and Fit?
I wish I had, to be honest. I've seen clips from Fresh and Fit. I must confess that I can't bring myself. Some of the time, I can't bring myself to watch these individuals in action. It's just there's just too much, and it can become a little bit galling.
It is a little soul-destroying seeing what's happening to people in the other parts of the world, the trafficking that happens, the way these people talk about women. They really don't consider women to be people. And this is Andrew and Tristan. They consider them to be property to use and abuse for their own benefit, and that seems to be the only purpose for women in their lives. As you said, they're spreading this message, which can't be any good for anybody.
I think there's also a sort of wider point to make, which is certainly in the UK, and I would assume it's the same in America, but we've seen a kind of degradation of all the politics has gotten messier, lines and behaviors are sort of being blurred. Tate has retained, I do feel sometimes slightly idealistic about the law and about our profession, and I know that there's lots of good lawyers acting honorably and taking their responsibilities, their professional obligations very seriously, and that's something you're taught constantly when you're coming up through law school. And to see Tate's lawyers mimicking his own behavior, in America, using a claim to potentially facilitate the harassment and intimidation of victims in a criminal case in another country, is shocking. And then here yesterday, Tate's Romanian counsel posing as a journalist, having to be outed by by actual members of the press for being Tate's lawyer and refusing to, identify himself. That's just way beyond the lines of acceptability. And it's really disappointing to see, regulated professional people who presumably have been taught the same things that every lawyer is taught, to start acting in a way that starts mimicking their clients. It's, everyone's entitled to a robust defense, but you're not entitled to those sort of, kind of playground tactics, which at the same time is very dangerous because, if it becomes normalized, then we're just in another race to the bottom.
One more question about the press conference, and that is, there's a 17-minute clip out there showing Matt having his say and Jillian having her say. How far after that was the interruption from Tate's representatives?
The interaction was almost immediate, I think, Jack. It
was as soon as the questions started. We have a second clip of some of that portion, so we can send that to you if that's helpful.
They jumped in straight away, and as Jack said earlier, I asked him to announce, who he was, which is standard at a press conference. If you remember the press, you announce who you're working with or for. And he didn't say anything which raised alarm bells for me. I must confess I didn't recognize him, but I thought something was up. First of all, he identified himself as a member of civil society, and he had every right to be there. And then he mentioned something about being a journalist. But as Jack said, it was up to other members of the press. Say other members, he wasn't a member of the press. It was up to members of the press, legitimate members of the press who were there, to out him as Tate's lawyer. I mean, that's just utterly bizarre.
So the male here is the lawyer for both the Tates, but just the brothers, though, if we understand the indictment correctly.
I went to a man's office, said I've committed multiple felonies.
There are things we can do. We could try this, we could try that.
No problem.
I make one call.
You don't go to jail.
There's no problem.
No problem.
We send somebody else to jail.
We send him. He is the new Andrew. He
Yeah.
shave his head and he go. I'm like, all right, it's cool. That's the lawyer I want.
Matt, you wouldn't be facing him in this civil action in the UK, right? He's a Romanian lawyer, and the civil case, of course, is in a UK court. So are we correct in thinking you would not be facing this guy in a courtroom?
No, that's correct. That's correct.
Focusing on the case that you're involved with directly, this civil case began with 3 women who came forward. Were these women known to each other previously, and how did you come to be involved as their legal team?
Well, I don't want to go into too much detail about the clients, simply because they're presently anonymized. Providing too much information at this stage could lead to them being identified. But in answer to your question, because of the nature of our work, a lot of our cases actually do come from referrals from journalists. In as much as if a journalist is dealing with a case and there's a victim and survivor of something especially traumatic, as I said, historically, we've largely dealt with victims of terrorist atrocities, but in this instance, it was thought that it was a good fit for us to look at this case and see if there were any routes to justice for the victims, because they've been let down by the authorities. I mean, that's something also, dare I say, and quite unfortunately, we've come to specialize in, which is when criminal prosecutions, for whatever reason, fail or falter, then we pick up the ball in the civil courts.
And the 4th woman, who joined on later, are we correct in thinking this is the woman who reported her 2013 event in 2015, and thus the reason why Tate was under investigation for almost 4 years?
No, there were 2 complaints, then a 3rd complaint, and that led to the criminal prosecution, or the criminal investigation, I should say. So those were our original 3 claimants, and then we were introduced to a 4th who approached us, and she didn't know Tate for a long time. They only met twice. On the 2nd occasion, while they were having sex, he basically choked her to the point where she lost consciousness and then continued to have sex with her after that. So she did not report that to the police at the time. She still may. It's obviously a personal decision. It's completely up to her what she does, but she joined the claim as a result of our announcements in relation to the other 3.
I should add the reason she didn't report it to the police is because and hasn't yet, is because she's aware of how poorly the other victims believe that the police have treated them, and the failure to bring Tate to justice based on their criminal complaints. So it's probably not surprising she doesn't have much confidence and faith that going to the police will result in anything. I would like to add that when we talk about the police here, I'm not tarnishing by any means every police officer or constabulary with the same brush. We've had fantastic experiences with the police and have worked closely with them on a number of matters. But in this instance, it's pretty clear that mistakes were made. At least, that's our opinion.
No, I think that's a pretty universal opinion at this point. Are you still looking for other women to come forward and join the action, or is that closed off now and new victims would require a new case to be filed?
No, in a word, it's not closed off. We are, not just in relation to this case. I think it's a policy of the firm, particularly in relation to victims of sexual crimes who are generally in a very vulnerable category, and we as a firm are committed to always doing everything we can to help any victim of any sexual crime, and we will always speak to them. We don't need to know their names or where they live or anything like that if they don't feel comfortable doing that. When we start, we're happy to give someone a free evaluation of their options, and then they can decide what they want to do. In relation to this case, we would be very happy to talk to anyone who wanted to come forward with absolutely no obligations to do or not do anything.
Now, for clarification, what are the goals of this case? What do you hope to see come from this legal action?
Well, the primary goal is, and it may sound trite, but it's not. Is justice and accountability. In our clients, the victims and survivors, they want to have their day in court. They want their stories to be heard, the truth to be told, and the perpetrator held to account. It may be through the civil courts, and of course, the only sanction of the civil courts, well, not the only sanction, but the main sanction of the civil courts is damages, is compensatory. And if there is compensation, and if that money can be moved from the suspected perpetrator to the victims, then that can only be a good thing, surely. In this instance, Tate is the defendant, and if he's found to be culpable for the alleged rapes, then it's the finding of liability is going to be the main thing, because for so long Tate's denied these claims, despite in the face of the evidence, he's consistently denied them. even worse, he's said that these victims don't even exist, that there's somehow a fabrication of the matrix, or some sort of false flag nonsense. I mean, imagine hearing that if you're a victim of a serious crime, sexual assault, that somehow you don't even exist. So that vindication is the primary goal. But what I would say this, Tate's been very vocal about being very fond of his money. So if we're successful and some of that money can be given to his alleged victims, then I think that's a good day also.
Now, does the civil court in the UK refer for criminality if the judge hears something during the trial that they absolutely know needs to be referred to a criminal aspect trial?
No, but that's a good question. And I mean, and that's the other aspect of it, of course. I mean, parallel to the civil proceedings, we're also working to, let's say, encourage the authorities to reopen the investigation and for a new decision to be made on a prosecution. Now that might happen during the course of the civil proceedings, but we've had cases which have, for whatever reason, there hasn't been a criminal prosecution. We've taken it to civil court. We've had a successful decision, a successful verdict, and then the authorities have revisited it and reopened investigations and made decisions to prosecute. So civil proceedings could be a powerful tool in let's just say refocusing minds on the issues and on the victims, and that's part of our intent.
The Romanian indictment includes brief descriptions of several events involving Andrew Tate that happened in the UK prior to November 8th of 2016. Reports shared by the UK with the Romanians through the International Police Cooperation Center of reports where women were allegedly raped and were beaten by Tate that were granted restraining orders against Tate. Are the women that were mentioned in the Romanian indictment some or all of the women coming forward now, or does that extend Tate's list of victims even further?
Again, I wouldn't want to confirm or deny, simply because we're trying to maintain the anonymity of our clients. So that's not me being evasive. It's me being cautious, obviously, and protective.
I think the one thing to say though is that our clients and the women we represent are certainly not the only victims in the United Kingdom.
As we know, Tate bragged about having 75 women working for him at one point, and we know what his MO was. So there's probably dozens of ears perking up and paying attention right about now. Without saying anything that would breach the anonymity, what can you tell us about the women involved in this case, how they came to be in Tate's world, and why each of them is involved in this action?
I mean, I can tell you why each of them is involved in the action. It's for the reasons we just discussed. It's vindication, it's justice, it's accountability, it's all those reasons. How do they come to meet Tate? It's a combination of those who worked for him in his webcam business. I say worked for him. I mean, it wasn't an employment relationship. These were individuals who were coerced and controlled into and exploited into I would say a form of modern slavery and handing over all of their wages to him. The others met him, thinking that they were, entering into either sort of just a date, going on a date or a romantic relationship. And so it's a combination.
So basically various stages of the lover boy trafficking method.
Yeah, that's probably a good assessment, Skeptic. Yeah.
What response have you received from Tate's legal squad, and are they finally acknowledging that these victims even exist? Because that's something he's been telling his Tater Tot army, that these victims aren't real.
What do you even say to something that ludicrous, to be honest? It's just the reason that anonymity needs to be preserved is criminally, if you in the UK, if you report if you're the survivor of sexual violence, you're entitled to anonymity as of right. And also, he encourages them to waive their anonymity because he knows that if that happens, he's able to ramp up the campaign of harassment and intimidation and threats that we've seen, unfortunately, in other proceedings. So it's a completely ludicrous suggestion that they don't exist. They do exist, and he will have to face the allegations against him in court, both in Romania and the United Kingdom.
I was just going to say, I think part of your question also was essentially, is he lawyered up in England? And we've received communications which are ostensibly directly from him, letters. So, not email, not electronic, letters in the post from him. But what I would say is this: I've got a pretty good idea that there is a lawyer involved, and I have an idea who that is. I don't know whether they're embarrassed to be, representing him publicly, or for what reason they're not coming forward and putting their name to these letters, which seem to have been drafted by a lawyer. And I have other reasons to sort of be pretty confident of who this lawyer is. But look, until they decide to raise their head above the parapet, then I'm just speculating.
Maybe they're just relying on Joe McBride to be their public face for them, since that's been working out so well.
That's working out really well, isn't it? Yeah.
What is the timeline for moving forward here? Are there more discovery phases to go through, or are you pretty much set to go forward in front of a judge and you're just waiting on them, or where are you in this process?
I mean, we'd love to be in front of a judge tomorrow, but the the English system is it's pretty rigorous. There's civil procedure rules to follow. There's this pre-action stage which we've been in for a little while. Also, we've been seeking additional disclosure from various sources. So we're sort of at the end of that phase. The next phase is for us to file the claim with the court, which then it's issued, and then it's for us to serve on Tate formally. I think we're probably at that phase within the next days, if not weeks. We're just essentially we're just dotting some I's and crossing some T's at the moment.
You mentioned at the news conference on Thursday that you played a role in having Tate's app, The Real World, removed from the Apple app and the Google Play stores. Maybe we can talk about that for a bit, because that's going to have a huge financial impact on the Tate criminal organization.
Yes, I mean, it's something that was brought to our attention, something that we have been looking at for a while. Tate's businesses, despite attempts to distance themselves from some aspects of their business empire, I think it's very clear who runs and controls them, because the faces of those individuals are all over everything. But they are very opaque. It's very difficult to get any kind of real detailed understanding of what exactly goes on inside them unless you are inside them. But everything we saw, and all the research that we and collaborators who we were working with did, pointed to the fact that the Real World relied exclusively on new members joining through existing members in order to return funds to existing members or allow them to make money. There was no other revenue stream for individual users. And I think they called it a multi-level marketing scheme, but there's a more accurate word for that, which is a pyramid scheme, which is actually illegal, certainly in the UK. It's also a crime in America, I understand it. Not only that, but it was also producing a huge amount of content which was directly aimed at or seemingly targeting young men and even children. We're talking sort of teenagers, constantly pushing out material that seemed to be designed for 13, 14-year-olds, which is obviously a huge concern as well. So we raised those concerns. There was a Twitter campaign. Our concerns were raised to both Apple and Google, who eventually did the right thing. And I'm sure they would have done their own investigation as well, and removed those applications from their stores, which I think is certainly the right decision. I think also it's a pyramid in two ways. The other aspect of the pyramid is that you have sort of Tate's online presence, which funnels people towards the Real World, which is sort of $50 a month, which in turn begins to funnel people towards the War Room, which is much more expensive, and where, if we're to believe the evidence that we've seen about it, sexual assaults, deviant sexual behavior, and human trafficking, exploitation of women for money is sort of taught. So yeah, that's obviously also a massive concern.
One of the things we covered in our series is how we believe that the Real World and the War Room is pimping young boys the same way Tate used TikTok and OnlyFans to pimp young girls. It's basically Tate's opportunity to take money from the other side of the gender spectrum. Does that sound like a fair assessment to you?
I would say so. I mean, I think that that's a very accurate assessment. Tate is a self-professed pimp. all of his methods really are the same, and if he can play both sides, then so be it. He'll do it.
Tate really doesn't care at all about anybody else other than his brother, it seems. He will do whatever it takes to milk you of your money so he can get his next supercar that he claims he won't even own.
The sad thing is people buy into his claims that he's the only one who cares about them. These young men and vulnerable young men and young boys, and he's constantly sending out the message that he's the only one who can save them. He's the only one who cares for them. But actually, he's just another exploiter. He's a groomer. He's an exploiter. He couldn't give two fucks. Sorry, pardon my language, but really, he just couldn't care less.
That's okay. That's exactly what I was going to say a little bit ago, but I wasn't ready to break the ice. Completely okay. YouTube allows us a couple of non-edits, so we're all good.
A couple of F-bombs. We're permitted, are we? We're allowed one or two?
Absolutely. That's your mulligan. The ladies you're representing are crowdfunding their legal fees through crowdjustice.com, and you're matching donations dollar for dollar. We'll show the webpage on the screen here. Is there any other information you'd like to add to encourage people to contribute to their cause?
I think the only thing I'd like to say is no one wants to be crowdfunding for legal representation. It's not a very good a good start to any legal case to have to do that, especially when you're up against an incredibly well-resourced individual like Andrew Tate. The reality is this though, that litigation like this is incredibly complex, and it takes a long time, and it needs resourcing. We're doing it on a basis where we're matching the money raised by providing every hour of legal services which are paid for through funding. We're providing a free hour. That's what we're doing. Essentially, we're doing it, non-profit, and we're very happy to do so. It's an important case for us to be doing, and a significant one. But the important point is, Tate's got millions of followers. He's made millions from exploiting women and vulnerable young men and boys, and our clients are victims of that and have nothing. And because of the trauma that they've experienced, you have an inability to work or earn the kind of money required to take the fight to Tate. The other thing I would say is that Tate's actions, the spread of his misogynistic message, it affects everybody. We should all be taking this incredibly seriously, and we all have an obligation and a duty to stand up to it. So to that extent, I just implore anyone who cares about these issues, but especially parents. And I'm a father myself. I'm concerned about the influence Tate and his cohort have on the young, and I want to put a stop to it. So I think we all have a duty and an obligation to support these women who have come forward incredibly bravely to take a stand.
And you make mention on Crowd Justice about the 24/7 rape and sexual abuse support line. Could you elaborate on that public service?
Yes, so that's Rape Crisis UK, which is a relatively new, I think. I think that line has been going for a few years. It does what it says on the tin. It's a 24/7 line that anyone can ring. So if someone has been subjected to sexual violence or the threat of sexual violence, or they have concerns about their friend and the relationship they're in, or anything like that, or even just some advice on how to support someone who's been sexually assaulted, etc. That's the first port of call. It's a wonderful service, and a very good resource for anyone in the United Kingdom.
That's a very important point you just brought up, that the support line is not just for people who have been assaulted, but they can also give advice for how to support someone that you think might have been assaulted. That both parties can call in, one to get the support, and the other how to support someone who is going through that.
And actually, if I can just say something on that, which is, I think, so important, is that the general conception of sexual assault and rape is that it's an extremely violent act committed by a stranger on another stranger. And actually that represents only a tiny portion of rapes and sexual assaults. The overwhelming majority take place in relationships or between people who know each other, and very often come with coercive and controlling behavior, which I think, certain as a society, I think we're waking up to that slowly, but it's really important that that message isn't lost, because it can be small things that initially that start as in a coercive and controlling relationship, and then they can escalate to much more serious behavior. So I think it's always worth, if you have a friend who suddenly is isolated because of a relationship they're in, or they seem to be acting differently, or if you have concerns about them, then obviously you should speak to them, but it's also worth trying to take some advice on how you can assist them, because when you're inside of a coercive and controlling relationship, it can often feel like a very, very sort of hopeless situation to be in.
In all fairness, these ladies have to pay to receive the justice in the courts that should have been provided for them by the criminal courts. And had the UK not been so negligent in their duties, none of the crimes in Romania from 2016 onwards would ever have taken place. So what happens if, as you say, is one of the goals? This civil case is successful in bringing about a reopening of the criminal investigation against Tate, as you indicated the UK Home Office is asking the police service to do.
So there would be an element of mutual legal assistance between Britain and Romania. But I imagine what would happen is the UK authorities would essentially get in line and allow Romania to prosecute him, and then seek to extradite him to the UK for prosecution in England. But that would be between essentially England and Romania to negotiate as to how they would manage that.
Yeah, you wouldn't be involved in the criminal litigation anyway, correct? You'd be turning over your files to the UK prosecutors?
Yeah, I mean, look, certainly, if there is a reopening of the investigation and a decision to prosecute, that would be the responsibility of the Crown Prosecution Service. We would step aside. We'd obviously provide every assistance and cooperation in terms of the evidence we've acquired, but no, that would be the state's responsibility.
So, any other final words on your case, and then do you have any comment about what's happening to the Tate victim case that has been filed in Florida?
I don't think I've got any final words on our case. I think we've covered the ground that needs to be covered. But what I would like to say, and I mentioned it at the press conference yesterday, and it's partly a personal plea, but what I don't understand is, there's obviously been a lot of reporting and commentary by journalists about concerns regarding the spread of Tate's misogynistic messaging and his exploitation of vulnerable young men and young boys. But where are the male role models? Where are the sportsmen, the businessmen, the actors, the musicians? Where are the high-profile figures who have a platform, who also have a megaphone? Some significant majority will be parents as well. I'm sure they share the same concerns that the rest of us do. But why aren't they speaking out? It just confuses me and saddens me. Actually, I don't understand what society's come to when people don't stand up for your neighbor. I don't get it. So this is a plea to anyone who has a platform, to anyone who has a megaphone. Please speak out. Please support those who are suffering as a consequence of this, as I see, hijacking of social media and the internet to spread these insidious, toxic messages that only cause societal harm and spread hatred and conflict. And cause harm to our children. If you have a chance, speak up about it.
That's a very fair request, because we see Tate being able to pick up the phone and get in touch with just about anybody. He's always got a celebrity hanging off of his arm because they run in the same circles, which is not going to work out well for those celebrities. We're certainly doing what we can from our end, shining the light on Tate, but there's not very many channels out there taking the contrarian side of the coin. There's a lot of journalists out there, a lot of mainstream media, a lot of former mainstream media that are enabling the Tate message, and it is infuriating to see him go on podcasts like Fresh and Fit and Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and Alex Jones and be able to spread to their audience this message of misogyny. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, the things, and I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, the likes of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, etc. They just don't have any standards, and dare I say, my personal opinion, don't have any morals. My view is they're just grifters, and they'll have anyone on who helps get some ratings and puts money in their pocket and helps boost their own profile. But we need those. There are good celebrities and journalists and those in the media and business worlds. There are good people out there. So please step forward and do something. Try and counteract this. Let's try and push back the tide.
Do you have any final comments on what's happening with the 2 victims in Florida?
Yeah, I think we're obviously not directly involved with their defense, and I think it was raised in the press conference yesterday, the fact that the organizations representing those women are having to defend them rather than prosecute them or pursue claims on their behalf is astonishing. I think it's in my opinion a blatant attempt to use the American legal system to interfere with criminal proceedings in a foreign country. But I think it will be exposed eventually for that and for what it is. And I believe that the federal court will ultimately make the right decision. And I hope the case is thrown out. And I hope there are consequences for those who brought it and who have enabled that sort of bullying tactic.
Unfortunately, tech issues cut the interview a little bit short at this point, so we PM'd the guys to sign off, and we continued our conversation offline.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Skeptic, for having us and allowing us to talk about what we think is an incredibly important legal action in the public interest and giving us the time to do so. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
A huge thank you to both of you for coming on and getting your information out there through our channel without interruption from the Tate legal team. For our listeners, please remember you can still contribute to the legal fund for the victims at crowdjustice.com, where McCue Jury and Partners is matching your donations dollar for dollar. We're going to end this interview with some highlights from the press conference of October 5th, 2023.
May I ask a question? Sorry, are you a representative of the press or Mr. Tate? I'm just wondering. You did introduce yourself.
I'm representative of the civil side. I don't have here, I'm not in the court.
No, I just wanted to clarify who we were talking to.
As Mr. Gillian Rose
part of the legal team.
He's Mr. Tate's lawyer. Sorry, that's what I wanted to establish. I think you should probably, again, for the sake of transparency and honesty and the manner in which your client and yourself have conducted yourself, maybe be honest. Maybe that should be the starting point.
You asked me
no, you're not,
about
sir.
my quality in this room today.
You have very little quality, sir. Introduce yourself as who you are before you ask a question.
Eugen Constantin Vidinac. I am lawyer in Romania.
For Mr. Tate.
For Mr. Tate is one of my clients.
Okay. Ah, right, thank you.
Thank you.
One of their citizens and their victims in this criminal case are being sued to intimidate and harass them. We need them to know that.
What
any ongoing case?
Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm an independent journalist. Is there any ongoing case against the Tate in the US or the UK? Because to my information, there hasn't been any case filed in the UK yet.
So in the UK, if you understand English law, we're obliged to take...
Yes.
Okay, I would like to explain, though, to the others here. I wasn't directing that at you. There's no need to be combative. Thank you very much. So what I was about to explain, given the opportunity, is that in England we're required to follow pre-action protocols. And we take our job very seriously, we take our profession very seriously, and those are the steps that we're undertaking. So civil proceedings are underway in the UK.
For Mrs. Gillian Rose, you told earlier
this is a press conference.
So, if you talked earlier about transparency, please let me talk.
It's a press conference.
No, let me speak.
It's a press conference.
You are in Romania as guests.
Well, sir, we're happy to have a conversation with you.
If you wish to have a conversation lawyer to lawyer, we can do in the proper forum.
Transparency is not from lawyer to lawyer.
I don't know whether you get this from your client, but intimidating and harassing and seeking to bully people is just not the done thing.
About Tate here, and do you want only, we want
Could we have a question, please? Hold your own press conference if you wish to do so. Jack, can we have...
Look, all I'll say, and this is the last thing I'll say,
is that the United States courts will review the evidence that the Tates have provided.
Exactly.
And they will. And we have reviewed it as well. On my belief as a lawyer who has done this work for a while, there is no legal basis for what the Tates state in the United States.
We're not getting involved in your circus, please. Can we have some questions from the press? Thank you. I'll answer your question. I've used alleged repeatedly, but I'll also say this. I believe the evidence strongly demonstrates that Andrew Tate is a rapist, and moreover, a serial rapist who likes to throttle women until the blood vessels in their eyeballs burst, and he continues having sex with them.
Liar, you're a liar.
And I'll also say,
when has happened this intimidation?
Suing victims of an active criminal case for $5 million while saying that
When in time?
July 2023 in Florida, the United States, they were sued.
I'll answer the question. It's intimidation when you make a baseless case without merit against your professional code of conduct and ethics purely for the purpose of intimidating and harassing witnesses and claimants.
What's your newspaper, lady?
there's two different lawsuits in the United States. The Tates have sued. They're the ones suing the victims. We're here defending them.
In Romania, we
And another one in the UK, the same.
They threatened my law firm with proceedings, with defamation proceedings, for simply doing our job.
The alleged victims are now considering a civil lawsuit after a lapse of 7 years.
Why are they? I'll put this very plainly. If you are the victim of rape or sexual assault, it doesn't matter when you bring your claim, you're entitled to bring it at any point. Sorry, I think what I'd like to say, just as a passing comment, as many of you already here may know, I'm speaking, please. The Tates threatened to disrupt this press conference.
Yes.
And evidently, his legal team are fulfilling their responsibilities. Yes, I do. Thank you. So, yes, I think we've finished for today. Unfortunately, I don't think we can carry on.